and welcome to our community. Susie Thomas with you this morning. So, always good to see Sherry Smith from the Stark County Health Department. Good morning.
Good morning.
And Sherry, your position there is?
I'm the Director of Nursing Services.
You've been there how long now?
Almost 21 years.
Oh, my goodness. All right. So, Health Department, really, you are the person on this December day that we want to be talking to about how to stay healthy as we're getting into cold and flu season. We've been there.
Yes, we've been there many times.
Did the flu arrive early this year?
It really did not arrive early this year. This year, it seems like the flu season is hopefully going to be much milder than it was last year. Last year, we had a rough flu season. It was widespread already in October last year. This year, we're only at local activity, and so far, we've only seen a few cases of influenza hospitalized cases. And it seems like the components in the flu vaccine this year are a really close match to the viruses that are circulating in our community.
So we hit it right this time.
Yes.
Why is that? Why would we see a milder one some years and a rough one last year?
Well, viruses can be tricky. Influenza or flu is a virus, and it usually fluctuates and goes in waves. A lot of times we see a bad year, and then we will have some milder years that go after it. And also, the viruses that are circulating this year, a lot of them are the same that circulated last year. So we know that our number one protection for the flu preventing the flu is the flu vaccine.
Right.
And hopefully there's some protection and immunity from last year's flu vaccine still. And we're trying to make sure everybody gets their flu vaccine this year as well, because the flu virus peaks sometimes as early as December, sometimes as late as February, and it lasts until about May. So it's very important that everybody gets their flu vaccine and tries to keep themselves healthy.
Now, if you got a flu vaccine in September or October, how long is that good for?
If you got a flu vaccine in September or October of this year, of 2018, that should last you throughout this flu season.
It does.
So through June of 2019.
Is it a stomach bug this year, or is it the respiratory bug?
Influenza itself is a respiratory illness. The stomach bug can be lots of things, and sometimes people, along with the respiratory symptoms like coughing, fever, body aches, they can also have some stomach things going around with it, but the gastrointestinal stomach bug is not really the influenza that we're worried about.
Okay, that's not flu.
It could be the stomach flu, but it's not influenza.
And that's not the one that we're worried about this year.
Nope.
How do you know whether it's flu or just a really bad cold?
Well, most importantly, I think the number one thing is basically, like I said, already to get your flu vaccine, because that's the number one way to prevent yourself from getting the influenza or the flu that we're talking about. Another way is to get yourself established with a primary medical doctor or healthcare provider, and to keep yourself healthy. And so that way, when you start to feel sick or ill, you have somewhere you can call to say, this is what I have going on. Usually the influenza, you're much sicker. You have a fever usually. You usually have a lot of body aches and pains, and it usually lasts much longer than the common cold.
Got it. Okay.
You're much sicker usually.
The one thing, and I know if I said to you who should get the vaccine, your answer will be everyone. Is there anyone who should not get the vaccine?
Well, everyone over the age of 6 months should get the vaccine, because the vaccine is only approved for 6 months and older. Okay. Somebody who had a severe reaction to a previous dose of the vaccine should, seek advice from a healthcare provider to see whether they should get it or not. If they had a severe anaphylactic reaction, then they probably should not get it. they should probably just focus on other things such as hand washing, staying away from people when they're sick.
There's always those people at work, and I know they want to be complimented as being very dedicated to their job, but there's always that person who comes in a little too soon, comes back a little too soon, who says, "I'm sorry, oh, stay away. I'm just getting over the flu." And aren't you in the back of your head saying, "Then what are you doing here?" Because shouldn't they be home in bed? When do you get back into circulation? When are you not? When are you safe to be around people again?
You're safe to be around people when you're feeling better and you're not fevered and you haven't been fevered for about 24 hours.
Okay.
But you'll probably still be coughing. So most importantly, you should cover your cough. When you cough, use a tissue, dispose of that tissue in the trash. If there's not a tissue available, cough into your elbow or your sleeve. And wash your hands often too, because viruses and bacteria and other things can also be spread by your hands. Actually, your hands are one of the most common ways that we're spreading germs and illnesses.
So also, what are there sprays and cleansers that are more effective than others when you're going through and going over things like your phone and doorknobs and things like that you touch all the time?
I don't know about any particular products, but it's just most important that if you use a solution that has like a 10% bleach in it, some of the Lysol or the Clorox bleach wipes or those that have alcohol in them, it's very important that you do wash or wipe TV remotes, your phones, things that we're using most often. If you're traveling, if you're on a plane, maybe try to wipe off, even with some alcohol-based sanitizer. I know you can only take very small amounts with you.
Right.
But it only takes a small amount to wipe off that area. Also, seat belts, things of that nature that people are always touching with their hands. You might want to think about doing that too.
Didn't think of seat belts when you're on a plane.
Yep, seat belts on a plane, in a car,
Yes.
on a train.
Yeah. Well, okay, let's talk about travel
On a bus?
a little bit more because you're breathing everyone's air there in a very confined space for a little bit of time. Do products like Airborne, do they make a difference? I know drink lots of water. You tell me, what should I do?
Okay. Definitely I would say drink lots of water because during cold, dry weather, our airways are more vulnerable to viruses and bacteria. So staying well hydrated keeps your mucous membranes moist so they can better keep bugs out of our systems. And they say that you should drink at least half of your body weight per day.
What?
Mm-hmm. So if
Say
you
that
think about
again.
it, let's say if you weigh 200 pounds, you should try to drink maybe 100 ounces of water a day.
Oh, okay. But not 100 pounds of...
Oh, no.
Right.
Yeah, it's about
The number of ounces
Yes.
would be the number
divided by half of your
Got it.
body weight.
Got
Yes.
it. Well, okay, that makes more
Because
sense.
they used to say, drink 8 glasses of 8 ounces of water, so
Right.
64 ounces of water. But now they say it also depends on how healthy you are, how much exercise you do, how you eat, how well balanced your diet is, and then also your weight. So now they say usually if you can drink half of your body weight in ounces,
Got it.
or to your body weight, depending on how active you are.
That makes sense because it can't be just across the board, one size fits all for everyone. We come in all shapes and sizes. But
Correct.
But that's a good rule of thumb. Why is that? Why is water so important?
Well, it's especially important in the winter months because of the dry air. And just like our skin, our mucous membranes dry out as well. And also, you mentioned air travel. So they also say to down 8 ounces of water for every hour you're in the air because the cabin air in airplanes is so very dry. So that's a general rule of thumb for that as well.
If they're coming through, with that little cart, and I know some people to settle the stomach prefer to have maybe a cup of tea or ginger ale or something like that. Can you get enough water from that to count, or do you need to have that water as well?
You need to have the water as well.
Okay.
Actually, if they come around with a little cart, if you can ask them if you can have the Sprite or the ginger ale, but also if you could have some ice water, that would be better for you.
Ask for both.
Yes.
All right, that makes sense. Now, I've also heard that we're contagious before we realize it, and we're contagious for longer than we realize. How long are we contagious for?
Well, general rule of thumb is you're usually contagious about 24 to 48 hours before you come down with a fever, and then about 24 hours after you have the fever. So once you're fever-free, 24 hours, then you're usually in the clear.
So use the fever as the rule of thumb.
Yes.
Okay. All right, so these 10 days quarantines, if someone's got the flu, necessary, not necessary, good idea?
Well, 10-day quarantines. I guess if they're fevered and they're very sick and they're sick enough to be hospitalized or need medical attention, then they should either stay home or go to the hospital and seek, medical care. But I'm not familiar with a 10-day quarantine for influenza. Usually if people are that sick, unfortunately, they'll usually end up in the hospital.
That might have been an old wives' tale.
Could have been.
That has been passed down through generations.
It could have been.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Now,
which was wise, because if they're sick, keep them away from everybody else.
Right.
Yeah.
We talked about the age of 6 months being the first time that a person could get the flu shot. What do you do if you've got a baby under the age of 6 months? How do you keep them healthy?
It's most important that while you're pregnant, you also get a flu vaccine. So that way you'll have some immunity that you transfer over to your unborn and newborn infant. Usually for the 6 months of life, any antibodies that the mother has will transfer over to the newborn. And also it would be helpful if the mother would be breastfeeding, because she would also get more antibodies through the breastfeeding to her new baby.
I'm back to how often we need to be washing our hands and how we touch things that so many people have touched that we're not thinking about it. So, and I only think the reason that we don't is because it's not top of the mind. Are there some things that we should be particularly careful? I know myself, I'm a little paranoid about handling money. And I'm really careful about washing my hands after I've touched any cash that may have gone around. But my husband pointed out how many people have touched that credit card that you hand out so frequently and they hand back to you. Should I be wiping that down as well? What don't we know that we ought to know?
I think we do know, but we just don't think about it that much because we use those things all the time, kind of like what you were saying. Along with washing your hands, you also need to watch your hands to see what commonly goes through your hands.
Smart.
And when you're touching things with your hands, especially like your face, including your nose and your mouth, because that's a good avenue for germs also to get into your body. And because cold viruses tend to spread more from hand to mouth contact than through airborne, you might think about mall doors, escalator rails, elevator buttons, ATM machines, money. Those are other things that you might think about. So I guess washing your hands often also is very good. And you also should think about packing an alcohol-based hand sanitizer. I carry this little 4-ounce thing on my keys for me so that I can regularly use it when I can't get to soap and water.
I've got one that's a spray.
Yeah.
That just kind of washes it. And you're able to get more of that onto a plane. Just because it is a spray.
Yes.
Being prepared.
Yes.
But, okay, that is good. So wash your hands. We think of it before we eat. Wash your hands before you eat. But my goodness, wash my hands before I touch my face. That would not come to mind.
Yeah, it's best to not touch your face at all through the day if you can help it.
And why is that?
Well, because your hands touch everything. They touch all these surfaces. It touches the desk here. It touches the doors. It touches handrails. It touches people. So if you can avoid touching your face, like I said, germs can get into your nose, they can get into your mouth, and viruses can make you sick through that route rather than airborne.
So there's more ways in.
Absolutely. There's all kinds of ways into your body.
You know what I love that you said? Not just wash your hands, but watch your hands.
Yes.
So just be aware of what am I touching.
Mm-hmm. Try to pay attention to what all your hands handle on a daily basis.
And then wipe that down.
Yeah.
Wow.
Wipe that down and wash your hands.
Such good
You
advice.
know?
We're visiting with Sherry Smith. She is Director of Nursing for the Stark County Department of Health. And we're going to take a short break. We'll be back after these words. You're listening to Our Community.